Hello, this is Oblivion Cubed, and today we are going to take a quick look at Overwar, The Night Comes Down. This is the Monarch edition, which was kickstarted successfully a bit ago. I just got this in the mail the other day. It is by Blackoath, and it's pretty good so far. So thought I would take a quick look at it, and we'll see about, we'll sort of discuss the contents of this book and see about making a solo play and doing a quick, very, very simple scenario to kind of show you how it all works out. So for Overwar, there are a few things that it suggests that you have as to play the game, right here. So this is solo or co-op or game master led. You should have something to write on, something to write with, a set of polyhedral dice, and a tarot deck or a deck of standard playing cards. That is a suggestion. So I have found in what I have done so far, the notion that you need a full deck of dice, of polyhedrals, is somewhat inaccurate. Outside of a few tables in the book, I haven't found a lot that I end up using the majority of the dice for. What you're really going to need, more than anything else, is 3 d6s. The vast majority of your time is going to be spent using these. Very few things outside of the roll tables will ever use anything but this. So if you only have d6s, don't worry about it. You can play this, absolutely no problem. As well, so before I get too much further, I have both the hardcover, right, and the softcover version. This is printed through ttrpg, I believe is where I got this. And they're pretty good quality. I like it. It's a good book. So I don't have a lot of recommendations of what you should pick between the softcover and the hardcover. It depends on what you want. They're both really nice. We're going to use the softcover in this, as it's the one that I have been tinkering around with so far. So with that said, let's take a look at the actual book itself. So we begin with a list of influences, right? So things like Fire Emblem, Symphony of War, Langrisser, etc., right? It mentions again that you need a full set of dice, a hex map, and either yourself or friends. Gives a content warning, a note on real-world cultures, and recommended safety mechanics. Of course, that's all pretty standard these days, right? So nothing surprising there. And then we're breaking down into the actual table of contents. So the way that this is set out as sort of headings and subheadings is fairly good. I like what they did. I kind of characterize it differently, right? So for myself, I'm finding that it's easier to think about pages 7 to 12 as sort of like our world setup, our lore, right? This does come with a setting in the book, and it's this really cool setting where you've got floating islands that had been considered to be defunct or, kind of forgotten, and then all of a sudden they invade the lands below. I won't go too far into the setting itself. If you're interested in that, I'm sure you can find dives into this And if not, I mean, ask me. I'll geek out about world building any day. But suffice it to say, there is a setting. It does give us some various nations and so forth, some of the political factions. It tells us about the various people that exist in this world, right? The arcane, the accursed, beasts. So there's beast people, there's angels, hidden folk, inorganics. These are sort of the types of units that you're going to be ending up using. They also can describe your commander, but it's enough that you get kind of a breakdown of what these guys are, how they relate to the world, where they kind of fit in, and you get some information about the daily life of people in the setting. You get information about a couple of little religions in here, and then it comes into playing the game. Also, this art, who did the art for this? Because it is fantastic. Let's see. Artwork, right? So these people, fantastic artwork throughout. So with that said, it kind of jumps into actually playing the game, right? So we get what I read kind of initially, a tip about creating your commander, right? And then that's kind of pages 13 to 21, I find. 22, we get into units, the different, they call them unit characters, and sometimes in the text here, they're going to call them characters. I just mentally always call them units, so that's just, if I say units, I mean these guys. These are your little kind of helpers. And then we get into game mechanics. There's quite a few pages of units that we have. We get into some mechanics on page 40, right? Navigating maps, creating settlements, capturing settlements. How the game actually plays is here between pages 40 and 50. We get some solo tables, solo rules, right? So if you are playing solo, we've got some ways to target things, semi-randomly. A very simple oracle spread. This is all very, 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 very common for anybody who is used to playing solo games. It gives you everything that you need, nothing that you don't. And then we jump into a couple of just handy little tables, action theme. We see this kind of table a lot in a ton of solo games. You can do a lot with this. It's really, really nice. And then we've just got, more random roll tables. Now these ones, for random provisions, random unit generators, this is still unit generation, random character generators. These are all things that you could use as a soloist or as a GM running this game. This is an example, right? Random character generator. This is not talking about your commander. This is talking about units that you can make. So just kind of keep that in mind. I mean, I guess it could talk about a commander, but it's mostly about units. We've got a random map generator, which we are going to use here. And then it gives some options for, this is sort of a optional game mechanic where instead of playing a scenario, which is what we're going to look at, you can go on a patrol instead. And this gives you some ways to make a patrol interesting as you're doing that for a session. We've got random settlement generators, inhabitant name generators, that kind of stuff. So this section brings us to sort of DM, GM facing advice, but it is also good for soloists. It gives you some rules for what to do if, gives you an option for making new characters. Again, this is units, can be commanders, by just giving them one of the traits that assigns it to commander. It looks more complicated than it actually is, quite honestly. Right, so commander right up here. It's fairly simple to build out a unit or a commander. I don't know that we'll actually tackle this time, but it is actually, this is, for all that it is a lot of text and a lot of reading, it's pretty simple. And then we get into a few customized or pre-generated scenarios, right? So the creators of the book have, I think, 4 different scenarios that come pre-built for 3 to 5 players at a variety of stages in the game, right? So this first one is no experience necessary. You should not have to have played the game before. The second one assumes that you did do one of the scenarios or a scenario that you made up yourself, etc., etc. So I've read through these. These are really neat little scenarios. I really like them. They're very good inspiration for if you are going to be doing something yourself. So with all that said, I wanted to mention a few things. Now, I've talked about commanders and I've talked about units. So the way that this works is very similar to if you've ever played something like my go-to. I know that in the inspiration it mentions several other games like, you know, Fire Emblem and so forth. My go-to touchstone for this is actually the Ogre Battle games, right? So if you've played Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen or Ogre Battle 64, this game is going to be extremely familiar to you. The way that it works is, it feels to me to be heavily inspired by that game. And the way that it's kind of set up just really, really makes me think of Ogre Battle. So you've got your main commander that you set up. You get to pick some skills, you roll. This is, again, an example of if I was to use one of these skills in the game, I would roll 3d6 plus the skill point. So either 0 or one of the ones that I've assigned. And that's how you get your value. So this is not necessarily a d20 game. A lot of the heavy lifting is done by d6s. But you've got your commander, and then you've got units. So each commander that you create or unlock or anything has character categories that you get. These are, part of it is created at the time that you create your character. You pick 5 from your list of unit characters, and these are forever unlocked for you. So it doesn't matter what map you're on, it doesn't matter what scenario you're playing. The 5 that you've picked, so Goblin, Scamperer, Rebel, Siren, Alchemist, and Hulk, those are things that I can always add to any scenario, right? My commander can take them in any unit formation, no matter what. These other, like I said, there's like 10 pages of these, maybe more. Things like, you know, the Kelpie. To unlock these, there's a couple of different scenarios. So we'll get to that a bit later. But, you know, it is fairly similar to things like Ogre Battle for me. Especially, okay, so I missed talking about this, but when you are navigating, right, we have a day-night cycle that activates. Terrain hexes have different properties and effects, and when you capture a settlement, very reminiscent of Ogre Battle, you get to draw from the divination deck, and each of those cards is something that you can play pretty much whenever you want, I believe, and they will have different attributes to them, right? So an Ace of Swords will give every unit in the front row 3 physical damage, right? Which doesn't seem like a lot, but then you look at the stats on these guys, Most of them are 2 to 4, right? A few of them have 6, a few of them have 5. The vast majority of HP that you're going to run into as far as units go is less than 5. I think the average is actually around 2 or 3. So like this is a great little divination deck, and you can have some really cool, powerful effects. You get provisions that you can use. These are just items, right? There's 8 items that give you various little effects. I made notes in here already where this is a 1d8. So if I need to ever roll on this, I can just roll 1d8. There is a table for this somewhere else as well, but this way I have it here too. So yeah, we have a lot of inspiration from things like Ogre Battle, Fire Emblem, so forth. And a lot of this is fairly straightforward. You pick your category, your unit types, and then you form them into a unit. Now we do get a unit sheet where you can write these all down. You can print this and write each one down, but there are quite a few. There's quite a few, so it can take you a little bit to kind of set these up. One thing that I would enjoy and might create myself if I get the time is having the unit types just on their own card, right? So something like this, right, where I've created the 5 unit types that I have, and I've just got them on cards that I could cut out if I wanted to. I grabbed this from cursenightgames.itch.io. It's the monster AI sheet. This is the last sheet of a very small PDF. It's like $5 or something. But I had already had this from various bundles, and I knew that it was kind of the card-like layout that I wanted. So that's why I use this. You could also use, dry erase markers on any of the little cards that you can buy on Amazon or whatever, to kind of create, semi-permanent cards that you could refer to, which I think would be easier than using the unit sheet and writing them out each time. That's just my opinion, but yeah. So I don't think I'll use this for my characters. I think I'll probably use this for the enemy. Yeah, geez. What else was I going to say about this? So the game itself is, there's a little bit of bookkeeping that you'll have to do, and part of that is just that there's a lot going on, right? Like, you've got to keep track of your unlocked characters. You've got to keep track of your reputation, your health, their health, as well as like all of the special things that your characters can do, right? So attack nearest, attack weakest, attack furthest, resist physical. Yeah, it can be a little bookkeepy, but I don't think that that's necessarily a downside. It just means that like setting up as a soloist does take a little longer. I think at a table with a group, this would be, far less bookkeeping than D&D, for example. So, grain of salt with what I'm saying. It can be a little bookkeepy compared to some other solo games that you might have tried. Now, as you can see, I have already set up a character, and I will very quickly kind of look at that through the book here with you. So setting up a commander is relatively simple. You get to pick one of the first things that you want to do. is pick a authority or pick a tag, right? So we gain authority no matter what. That signifies us as a commander. And then we want to pick a tag between human, accursed, arcane, beast, divine, and hidden folk. These are the same species types, races, or whatever that we see at the start, right? So accursed are people like vampires and devils and undead. Arcane are wizards, spirits, elementals. Beasts are beast people. The divine are folks that are angels or, you know, paladins and stuff like that. Hidden folk, to me, read a little like elves and dwarves and so forth. And then inorganics are, you know, your gargoyles and, you know, various inorganics that have gained personhood. So you want to pick one of those to start with, and then with that, so I picked for mine, I picked hidden folk. I actually just rolled a d6 and picked whatever it landed on. So, and then it gives you a commander history. Now this doesn't provide any mechanical benefit whatsoever. You can roll on it or you can pick from it, whatever vibe, you know, works best for you. I picked Wanted. I named my guy Mad Mardigan as a nod to my favorite fantasy movie of all time, Willow. So I wanted this guy to be a wanted, you know, criminal or ex-criminal. And then it gets us to, you know, state why our soldiers follow us. This, again, doesn't really have any mechanical benefit at all, but it does give you something to frame your role-playing choices against, right? So in my case, I chose that people follow me because of a desire for promotion and advancement. Optionally, I could have picked, you know, shared ideals, as he is a wanted man, but that's fine. This just means that, like, as I am role playing, I can kind of keep in mind that the units that I have chosen and the characters that they represent are here because they think it will, you know, be a wise choice long term for their career. Then we get to pick some stats. So once again, HP is fairly low in this game. You get 4, and then you can boost that by selecting various bonuses. Now there's quite a few bonuses. I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of them are sort of double-edged, right? So let's see if we can find one that that is a bit of a boon and a bit of a bane. So sweeping, for example, right? So targeting bonuses, sweeping is -1 HP, and it changes attack furthest to attack front row or attack back row. So by default, we have attack furthest. And now that is something I will kind of touch on, you know, right now, actually. It is probably fine to do. So much like Ogre Battle, right? Your commander and every unit has a single specific attack that it will do. In this case, I target the furthest unit away from me, and I attack it for 2 damage because I've picked Brutal as my commander special and Hardy so that I get that extra HP. Some of my units will have attack nearest, and the way that that works is if we have a target, right? So this, right? Our lines are 2 ranks of 6, right? So this front row, back row, front row, back row, and then whoever is nearest or furthest from that character. I might be making it sound complicated. It really, really isn't. I will show you in actual play what that looks like. So what I was saying is this is a bonus that changes one of the defaults assumed about our commander and does give us a little bit of a detriment, right? So if we wanted sweeping, we have to take a hit to our HP to get that. If we wanted to be a necromancer, we only get this single bonus, but we can replace them. We can replace anyone who is knocked out immediately with the skeleton sling. So, you know, like there's a trade-off for the power and usefulness of each bonus that your commander can take, and you can only pick 2, or in the case of the massive bonuses, you can pick 1. And with that picked, then you have to choose some skills. So, you know, similar to any RPG, you have various skills that do various things, and with that, you can, you know, sort of do your in-city or, you know, commander-to-commander roleplay. You get 7 points that you can spread out however you see fit. So for mine, right, I chose subterfuge, tactics, and wandering as 2-3-2. Right, I wanted them to be fairly tactical. These are things that I don't know how much I will use the skills, if I'm quite honest. Because a lot of the game feels like, you know, taking my commander piece, mashing against an enemy commander piece, and then moving on from there. I think that there is room for RP elements. I just don't, without having sat down to play yet, I don't see where the RP elements are, or I should amend that. I don't think RP is going to be a big aspect of the game, but I might surprise myself. So we'll see. And then the last thing that we do once we have picked our skills is we draft our unit. We pick 5 types of characters, and we spend 5 draft points. So we have 5 points. Each type of character has a point cost, right? So if I had Alana the Gold, she is a 4-point basic character. And so that means I would have her and one other person. So like a mountain ram, for example. And that would be my 5 cost draft points. That is something that you can increase as you level up. But early on, I myself took just a bunch of low point characters. And then you've kind of got everything set up. From there, you kind of skip right into actually playing the game. Which is maybe what we'll do next. So, I will start rolling up a map. We'll create a very simple, hopefully relatively quick single scenario, and we will go through it. So for creating the map, that is right here. This is a very simple 3d6 scenario where we take our 3d6, we roll, and then we check the chart to see what we got. So the way that it suggests for creating a new region is it suggests that our character always begins in the bottom leftmost hex. And then we fill out the hexes from left to right, bottom to top. Right? So we would go bup, 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 and then fill these all the way up. Just rolling on rolling on this chart. The initial hex that we are in has no terrain property, right? So that's effectively like plains, right? Like it's not hard to move through. It's nothing special. So if we started here, right, then this one would be no terrain property as well, right? And this one would also be no terrain property. You'll notice here that basically what we're looking for is 4 or less, or 14 or higher, for there to be a change to the terrain type. So a lot of these, what you'll find is once you get to a terrain type, depending on your dice, it can stay that terrain type a lot. I don't know how to mark this, so I will just do 3 little lines to signify that it's plains. This one was also plains. 12, so this one's also plains. This one's also plains. And then what you do as well, sorry, I'm forgetting something, is we need to roll to see if there are settlements on here. And after populating a hex, if there are no settlements within 2 hexes of it, and the hex is not water or air, roll a d6 and then check if there's a settlement. So if there's a 1, there is a settlement. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's roll these. I didn't say which dice that was. That's my bad. Let's say that this one is a settlement. So we'll just make a quick little very bad house. So we've got 1 settlement here, and then we had 1 more, and so no. So that means that the rest of these cannot have, right? So anything within 2 cannot have another settlement. Okay, so we'll come back to generating the actual settlement in just a second. Let's continue on and see about the terrain. So none, and then we're gonna, like a typewriter, come back to the start, and there we go. So now we have 14. So that gives us a road. So we'll try a little road here. And then we switch from rolling on the no terrain property table column, right, to rolling against the road column. Now this one has a lot more variety, right? Whereas this one was basically no terrain for a huge chunk of it. This only remains a road if you're between 7 and 11. Otherwise, you're going to switch to something else, which is fairly accurate, right? Plains are going to make up a huge chunk of, any terrain. So 9, which means we've got another road. And what we'll do is we'll just do that. I will clean this up after. And then we'll come to this one. So 10, that's another road, which I assume would come down to this village, right? That's another road. And that's hills. Okay. Oh, that looks bad. Right? You don't have to be a good artist to play this game. Just make something that kind of looks like hills. Or just ride an H, or whatever you want to do. It's all good. So 12 on the hills is forest. We'll make little trees. And then we just kind of come back to the start. So this is kind of setting up the map. I'm going to pause this for a second so you don't see me do all of these lines. And then I will come back when this is all filled out. Okay? All right, so we are back. And we've filled out the region with a bunch of rolled up terrain features. And we've got a few villages, settlements. I don't know why I called them villages. So we've got a settlement here, one here, and one here. And now we can roll up some random settlement details. So for settlement 1, where should we note this? Maybe over here. S1, S2, S3, and S4. So for S1, we're going to have, oh, this is a 2d6 roll. We're going to have 6. So it is human. I do notice it does have who lives here and then who lives here again. So I assume that this is like split settlements, so like human slash something. Let's see if that changes. Still 7, so just humans live here. How do they feel about our presence? So all are welcome. All welcome. Government type is overlord. So they have an overlord. Their main industry is, so that's an 8 lumber. Yeah, I don't think so. Let's switch that because of the location that they are. Like I guess there is lumber a hex away, but we've got 2 other settlements literally in a forest. So let's switch that to farming. And main conflict, let's see. Internal squabbles. Okay. Internal squabbles. This gives you an idea of how you can go about generating settlement. We do have settlement names that we can do. This is a D66, so this is going to be our primary. This is going to be our secondary. So primary 2, secondary 5. So 2-5 is lol 1-1, lol ac, and 4-6. Lolak Mia. Okay. Yeah, so this gives us enough, I think, just based on this, that if we were creating a scenario like we have in the back of the book, right, we know that there's internal conflict here. There is a ruling overlord in this area, and we could probably make some sort of quest specific to this scenario. I'm not going to do that today. I I will definitely be doing it when I play this off-camera solo. But for today, I'm not going to bother doing that. It's enough to kind of show you how you would go about generating a settlement and show you the map. So with your map all generated, your settlement generated, you're next going to want to create a random scenario, right? If you're not running one of the scenarios that was given to us, if you are creating your own random scenario, or if you're playing solo, this is kind of what you want to next do. And right, so it says the lowest leftmost hex is our starting position. And for each player, now there's only one player because it's just me, designate a hex as an enemy spawn point. We drop the die towards a center of a map and assign it on whatever it lands on. It produces enemies at the start of each day or night. Determine which enemy units spawn by rolling d6 divided by 3 for a small map, d6 for a medium, 2d6 for a large, and checking the result against your list of the map's enemies' unit types. After designating enemy spawn points, spawn a unit and determine whether or not it's day or night, and then pick an objective. So just for argument's sake, let's pick one of our dice. Let's pick a d20 for this one just so it rolls extra. We'll just drop it towards the center. That was a bad idea. Okay, come on. There, we'll say. Let's shift that. No, let's leave it right there. So this is going to be a spawn point. How do we want to signify that? So I'll draw a little pentagram up here. That'll be our spawn point. And then I'm not going to bother with the unit types just yet. What I would rather do is check what kind of objective we have. So this is a D6 escort. So we are on a escort mission. We want to get from here to here. And we are going to be pursued by units that spawn every time the day or night cycle shifts. Okay. All right. Designate the upper rightmost hex as the map's exit hex. Have the players create a friendly unit from any character types with the same number of draft points as their unit. So 5, in my case, because we're just starting. Place it at the starting position with our players. Players share custody of this friendly unit and may activate it instead of activating their own units. If the friendly unit reaches the exit hex, they win. If it is destroyed, they lose. Okay, well that's fairly straightforward. So, with all of this done, there's some things that I would be doing if I was playing this not just as an example, right? So, first and foremost, I would give each of our settlements different names. I would pick some people that live in there, and I would probably think of some sort of little quests to do for them. Also, since owning a settlement is valuable, I would give each of these something to benefit my player, right? So you can kind of see that by looking at the example scenarios, right? Where we have this map, right? Where they've created, we're actually beginning in A up here, and then there's like the Rebels camp settlement, right? It is inhabited by rebels, and the first player to capture this feature unlocks rebels. Any other player may bring 6 rations here and also unlock rebels. Now, the way that this works typically, if you are playing a scenario, is that you unlock these temporary guys while you are playing this scenario, but you don't keep them permanently unlocked. So it lets you, pick up rebels if you don't have them, pick up clerics at the church if you don't have them. If you've done certain things, you can get, I think this is the map where there is, there are vampires here that you can, yeah, so Settlement F. Settlement F, if you were to keep the vampires alive, lets you recruit vampires. Optionally, you can slay the remaining vampires and gain 3 rations and a chalice. So this is just a simple choice, right? Where I don't believe that there is actual combat associated to this. You just do it. So you slay them, you get a chalice, and you gain 3 rations. Or you can keep them, take a hit to your reputation, and unlock vampires. So that's something that I would definitely do normally. But in this case, I'm not going to actually go that far. If this is something that you guys would like to see actually played out, then I will actually go about doing that. But I just wanted to give a really quick impression. Quick, he says, it's 45 minutes. A quick-ish impression of how this actually plays. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this right now. I'm going to create an enemy unit, and we're going to look at combat. Okay, so I made up a unit for our enemy and picked what will be in my unit composition for me. And what we'll do is we'll kind of show how this would go. So as the gameplay starts, there would be us, and I guess there would be our escort unit as well. So let's just say that this guy's our escort unit. This is the dude we're escorting. This is us, and we've got an enemy that starts, unfortunately, close to us. You could move them around, right? Like we could say that instead of it being here, let's say that originally we rolled it being from the snowfields. So if we started here, every round we pick one unit to move as a player. That's called activating your unit, and you can do something like stepping onto a nearby hex. Your character moves based off of your commander's movement speed, right? My character's movement is 1. So I can move 1 hex per activation. Each activation is one of... Let me rephrase that. Every time you activate something, it fills up a slice of our, 6-piece clock. And every time it fills up all 6 pieces, it switches to day or night. Right? So you've got 6 activations. And the reason that I set these guys like this is because units can only occupy the same square if they're actively engaged in battle, right? So if these two were actively engaged in battle, they could technically be on the same square, where then you would be fighting out the battle to see what happens. But in the case of our escort job here, we are going to be 1 hex away from them. So what I would do is I would choose to activate like my main character, for example. And what we could do is we could come into this village and they could say, hey, there are super antagonistic lizard men living in the ice fields up north. Can you deal with them? Or whatever. And we can, pick up our quest. So that's one activation. So we would fill one chunk of our pie. After a player goes, the enemy goes. Now, in this case, this enemy has a... I chose a ride spider, which gives +2 movement to the commander. So these folks can move a little bit further and a little bit faster. Now there are terrain complications that we have to take into account, and let's find those because I forgot to look it up first. Alright, so terrain types. Entering this hex reduces by 1 the remaining number of hexes a unit can move. So if this guy has 3 hexes, we move into here, that's 1 hex used, -1 hex. So he's got 1 more hex that he can move. And we could put him into the forest here. Right? There's no real fog of war. We're kind of assuming that the enemy knows where your unit is and they will come to you. There are rules for, there are some units that could remain stationary protecting a specific point. So if there was a governor in this area that we wanted to get rid of, or that was antagonistic or even neutral, we could set a unit here and we could say that they stay here until such time as we come and invade them. So just so you know, it's not always going to be you getting directly harassed. Right, so with moving this guy, that's 2 of our moves. Now, we could choose to move this guy, right? But that puts them dangerously close to the unit that is probably actively trying to get to them rather than us. So we've captured this city. We would get whatever we wanted, right? So if I had said that holding that city grants us something like a banshee or whatever, a chef, we would now have that unlocked temporarily for this game. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to activate our unit again, right? So that's his second activation. We're going to go to a road, which gives us +1 movement. So normally I would stay here, but I can in fact move up here. And then that's our third activation. They could activate and step into my hex, and then the battle's on, right? So with that, we can look into setting up a battle. I also forgot, if we take a city, we get to choose from our tarot deck, right? We get to pick a random card from the deck and see what we get. So 9 of Cups is the card that we've drawn. I'm not sure exactly what that does, but let's check before we actually get into the battle. So 9 of... Let's say 9 of Cups. Yeah, okay, so this only goes to 6 instead. So we're going to call this a 6. Instead of me changing this out, we're going to call this a 6. So 6 of Cups, your commander cannot be knocked out during this combat, even if reduced to 0, but is immediately knocked out after combat ends, is what playing a 6 of cups, if you happen to get it. I didn't realize, I hadn't read that this is only sort of ace through 6 for each of the suits. Otherwise I would have pulled these out to begin with and start with a pared down deck. So note to self if you're going to be using a tarot deck. We'll just set that aside for right now. I don't think we're going to use it, but it is useful to show that it's an option, right? So, okay, let's move to a combat. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could show your combat lines. Because I have the minis here, I'm going to use the minis. So I'm going to set these guys over here, and we're just going to kind of ignore the underlay here. So this unit has 2 reptile men and a single ride spider. So we'll set our 2 reptile men and our mechanical guy who's a ride spider in this. And so that's position 1, 2, and 3 of the front row, right? So if they had a back row, it would be back here. So 1, 2, and 3 of the front row, you can have up to 6 in a row, right? There are 6 columns that you can fill if you were so inclined for each row. With that said, let's set up our units. So we've got the enemy unit. What we'll do is we will pick our commander. Our commander is always the first front row and left most character, I believe is what it said. Let me just double check that here. Your unit's formation consists of a front row and a back row. With 3 columns each. So you've got space for 6 characters. So I did that incorrectly. Now place your characters, including your commander, in the unit in any order. Okay, so I'm glad I looked that up. So our commander could be back row, and I think I'm going to set him back row. And then I've got, so we've got 5 draft points for our unit. And so most of these guys cost 1 draft point. My alchemist and my siren cost 2 each. So what we'll do is we'll pick a Hulk and we'll put them in the front left, just in front of my commander. Then we'll pick a rebel, and let's go with a goblin scamperer. We'll put him in the back. So that's 1, 2, 3 points used, and then we've got a 2 point that we could also use. So let's pick the alchemist, and we'll set our alchemist up. So each of these has different things that they can do, of course. But the way that combat works is you go from the player side, each unit moves, and then the enemy unit does a thing, right? So I'll show that in just a second. Capturing settlements, combat. The leftmost, frontmost character in the unit that initiated combat acts first. Okay, so I didn't initiate, so this dude is going to be the one that, in fact, acts first. And then it alternates from him to me, to him, to me, to him. So that is going to mean that we need our enemies here. So this Drop my pencil and got a hair. This reptile man has attack nearest for 1 physical damage, right? So the nearest to the leftmost character in the front row is going to be my leftmost character in the front row, my Hulk. So he is going to attack my Hulk for 1 damage. My Hulk is going to be down to 4 HP. And then it's going to cycle to me. My Hulk does a 0 damage physical attack. 0 damage physical. That's not a mistake. There are buffs and things that you can get that would turn your 0 into a 1. But as it stands, the Hulk is effectively going to do nothing against the nearest enemy, which is the guy that just attacked him. All right, so then we are going to move to the next in the lineup. So that's going to be this middle guy on the enemy side, and that is our Ride Spider, which also has an attack of nearest with 1 physical. So the nearest to him is going to be straight across. And so he's going to attack our Rebel Human, right? Our Rebel Human, who handily enough has resist physical and ignores the first point of damage from each attack. So he takes 0 damage, but this no longer applies. He attacks back because he is also... oh, actually, no, wait. He is attack furthest. So attack furthest means that either of these two are viable for him to attack. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Normally, you would try to attack like the back row if there was anything in the back row, since that's the furthest. But we'll just attack the furthest to the right, and we will hit him for 1 damage. He's a reptile man, so he goes down, right? By knocking him down, we get something called a victory point. So if you kill a commander, you get 3 victory points. If you kill a unit, you get 1 victory point. So we've got 1 VP right now. And it switches to... these guys have both moved. So then it switches to my commander, who attacks 2 furthest. So that's this dude, right? Knocks him out. And then our Goblin Scamperer attack weakest. There's nobody else, so this is the weakest, so takes him out. If combat had played out differently, right? This is not a game where you roll, it just happens. But let's say that for whatever reason, these guys had more HP. What would happen is this guy, everybody on the enemy team does their move. Everybody on my team does my move. And then we see who has the most victory points. And that's how we decide who wins, right? So this is where it comes, it becomes really, really clear the reason that I keep bringing up Ogre Battle, right? You do 1 round of combat, you tally up your points. So in the case where I had knocked one of them out, but not destroyed the unit, I would win, and they would fall back 1 hex. Right? In the event that they had won, I would fall back 1 hex. I would retreat 1 hex. And in the event that I had destroyed them, they would be removed from play. And then I would be able to continue forward, escorting my little dude all the way to the exit. Right? Does that make sense? So, as we are, taking that round of turns, you can apply a divination card at any time. You can use any of your provisions, right? I guess not any of them, any of your combat provisions, right? So Blessing, Goblin Ball, Kaleidoscope, Stimulant, Treant Sap, you could use those. You could use your anytime provision if somebody was knocked out. You could use your Chalice and bring them back to life. And that's sort of how you would manage to achieve a victory. And then you proceed through to the exit, right? Or if this was a different scenario and it was a battle royale, you would kill everybody on the map. If it was that you needed to take a specific settlement, you would try and do that. Whatever the scenario entails. Yeah, so that's sort of it. That is a long, hopefully not too long, look at how overwar functions. Now, there's a lot, obviously, that I sort of glossed over here. There are things like how to level up, right? That I didn't touch on here. Because there's a couple of different ways that you can advance. There's simple advancement, where having completed our first scenario, we get one more draft point, and we can restructure our unit if we want to. That means, you know how I had my Hulk set up, and I had this guy here, so we could change who is in our unit and their structure, right? How they're set up. We can discard a divination card and draw a new one, and we gain a Blessing, Chalice, Goblin Ball, or Stimulant to take into the next scenario. All of these things happen after every odd numbered scenario, including the first one, if we chose simple advancement. After every second or even numbered scenario, we would get a Valor Pip, which allows us to basically just boost a unit, gives them +1 HP, or extra damage, or attack all. No, sorry, not attack all. Extra health or extra damage. We can, again, choose a different divination card, and we can, again, get a Chalice. That's with simple advancement. The other option is complex advancement, where we get to create a war camp. Now, you might have seen really quickly a sheet that I had below where we have our war camp. And this is where everybody in the group decides what to do after every scenario. You can choose to build one thing from this upgrade list. So there's things like alchemical workbenches, or envoy to the aggrieved. Stumbling over my words here, which is where you unlock one non-legendary character type, and you permanently get that as part of your war camp, right? So this is one way to get permanent unlocks that doesn't require you gaining them from a scenario, right? So you could choose as a GM or as a solo player that holding or completing this region gives you one of the character types that you've unlocked, and you could have that permanently. Or you could use War Camp, and you can have that as a option that you can do as many times as you want, right? So every single scenario, you could choose to get a new unit type. You could choose to get more rations at the start of each scenario. The downside to the complex option is that if you want to build any of the elite upgrades, you have to skip an upgrade first, right? So if I had completed this session and I was using the war camp, I could choose to do nothing, and then my second scenario, I would get to build dragon butchers or get a fortune teller where the GM shares a helpful secret before each scenario. If I chose to skip this again, I could get organizational support, where I get to pick a third commander bonus. That would apply to everybody in the party, right? So if you were running this for a group, everybody would get a third commander bonus. And no matter what, after every 4 scenarios, you get 1 draft point, right? So this is something that for a solo player, the war camp is a slower way to get extra draft points. Definitely much slower than simple advancement. But it does give you a way to permanently unlock legendary characters per the rules. Whereas simple advancement does not. War camp definitely feels like something that is set up to be tailored to a party. And now, if you were soloing multiple commanders, this might be super viable still, right? Because you've got enough units that you can field 3 or 4 units, put them on the table, and if one of them dies, it's not a big deal. But if you are purely playing solo with 1 unit, then simple advancement is probably, at least early on, going to be more bang for your buck. It's also faster, right? So if you're just doing one-shots, simple advancement is going to be your friend. If you're doing a campaign in Overwar, I keep wanting to say Overwatch, good gracious. If you're playing a campaign of Overwar, you're going to probably find that War Camp is going to give you by far the most bang for your buck, right? It's slower progression, but it's way more rewarding. And then there's things like downtime, which I didn't really touch on. There's things like reputation, which I didn't really touch on. This is something that you can pair really well with your RP, right? So whether or not you've chosen certain things is going to increase or decrease your reputation. As a solo player or as a GM, you can take that information and then have consequences, right? Downtime lets you just kind of RP in camp. You can do personal tasks. You can kind of talk. This gives you a sitting around the campfire scenario outside of, traditional RP role-playing games like D&D and so forth. So like there is a lot in this book that I did not touch on. It is fairly dense. There is a huge amount of stuff here. And once you kind of read through and understand the rules, for all that it has in it, it is a fairly simple game, right? There's a lot that goes into it, but it's extremely rewarding, extremely simple to, kind of understand. It is GM heavy. So if you are GMing for a group, there's a fair amount of thought that you're going to have to put into making custom scenarios. So anything that you can do to lighten your load is going to be helpful unless you enjoy doing this, right? So if you wanted to go online and download a hex map that has been pre-generated for you, that's a lot of rolling that you don't have to do. You can plop down some settlements, make some neat things that spawn units, and you're done, right? So it could be very GM heavy to set up the scenarios and make conflicts that are rewarding for your players. But I think with practice, you would find that it would be really, really easy to do. So I'm not saying that as a negative, right? I think the first couple of times that you do this, it's going to be GM heavy. It's going to be a lot of work. Probably by the 3rd or 4th time that you've done this, you're going to be an old hat to this. You're going to be able to make them fairly quickly. Yeah, so I don't think I really have anything else to say here beyond the fact that this is a really, really neat game. I like the way that it is designed. I like having your little units and being able to kind of get that ogre battle feel at the table. I think that I think that as a solo player, you're gonna have to take some extra care to thread RP into this, right? With a GM, you would be able to pretty easily add role playing points, but as a soloist, you could probably pretty quickly fall into the trap of having it be, role playing more than role playing, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you like, go for it. But if you want RP, you'll have to be mindful of it as you're going to these various scenarios. You might want to have a chance for commanders of opposing armies to talk, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of rambling now. I'm going to close it off. This is a really fun little game. If you're interested in seeing a slower, more well thought out actual campaign of, I don't know, 3-ish episodes long, I could go about making that. Really cool game. Really, really highly recommend it. You can get it from drive-thrurpg. It's fairly quick to get delivered. You can go to Blackoath Games to. I'm sure they have a way to purchase it from there. Probably leading to drive-thrurpg, but yeah, it does have PDF versions if you don't like physical. Oh, and that actually reminds me, one thing, the page numbers in the physical are off by 2 pages. So anytime that it says to turn to page, 15, it's actually page 14. Page 23 is page 22. Page 72 is page 70. At some point in the process for turning the PDF, which is properly numbered for pages, turning the PDF into the book version on drive-thrurpg's end, 2 pages are lost. They're blank pages. I've looked, and I think I see where the pages are omitted. But it does throw off the counts in here, so just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you found it informative. I hope that it wasn't too brief on any point. If you have any questions about any of the things I rapidly covered, let me know. I would be more than happy to look into it in a more granular way. With all that said, as always, thank you very much for watching, and happy gaming.